Thank you. Thank you
for being here. I'm going to speak in English, and I think the translators will do a good job because they have my notes. I'm exceptionally proud and happy to be here because this is sort of like a rounding off of a 23-year journey with IZEA. I was a participating artist in IZEA 2000. Karine Lemanlet has just left the room. She was the artistic coordinator for that event. So very happy to be here at IZEA 2023 for this wonderful event. So I thank the organizers. So I'm here to share with you some recent research about symbiotic food networks. Yes, we're going to talk about food and its networks, and particularly my Alchemist kitchen, which is where these projects are born. I use food as material and subject in projects driven by research into climate emergencies and food availability. They involve the creation of hybrid consortiums with organic materials and systems that are technological, biological, and social to critically re-examine human, non-human relationships in symbiotic dynamic interplay. In my paper, I develop an argument distinguishing food art, on the one hand, and food through art, showcasing projects that promote an alternative worldview, fueled by the utopian premise that art can facilitate reflexivity and influence behavior. Now, this is not an art history lesson by all means, it's very reductive, but I just want to present this as context, because representations of food in the visual arts have a long history, as you know, from ancient Greek art, where depictions of food were intended to denote a civilized lifestyle, to medieval still life painting, to the well-known mannerist work by Giuseppe Arcimboldo, and much later in the 20th century, the illustrated cookbook by genial Salvador Dali, Les Dîners de Gala, where images, in most of these cases, were intended primarily as aesthetic depictions, providing a spectacular feast for the eyes. On the other hand, works that fall under the category of food through art imbue the experience of food with critical meanings, whether they be cultural, social, political, etc. And a historical overview on the use of food in the 20th century shows that for many artists, food became an instrument of critique. And these projects at times involve audience participation and are intended to extend public knowledge and engagement. For example, you of course know the Futurist cookbook and their events that were political manifestos advocating a type of cuisine that would embody the new progressive ideals of modernity. Or projects related to social practice, where food has been used to explore the promise of gift relations or ideas of hospitality, with artists rather in the role of facilitators rather than makers. And then, of course, not to mention the use of food as information, such as Death by Chocolate by Data Cuisine Collective, representing open data in local food. Those caskets are created with 3D printed chocolate, and the fillings within those caskets represent the most common causes of death in Belgium. They have a whole set of really fascinating projects. And then, of course, the food selfie phenomenon, of which I'm sure we're all guilty. And they become projects for people like Joy Garnett and myself, in that we use the phenomenon in social media to present personal meal photos as a testament of communication in the digital era. And both of these projects were begun in 2010 and were deployed through a number of years. And they, of course, address the fuzzy line between media and genres in Web 2 society. And then there are bio-artists who often combine the aesthetic and the artistic with organic, often living matter. And of course, we have free-range grain performances using molecular biology to test for genetically modified food in global trade, or cobalt-60 saws made from mutation-bred ingredients. Also in 2011, for those of you who were in Istanbul and I presented that project within that context, my own project, Al Grano Augmented Cereals, focused on food safety concerns and the deception of a better world behind bioproducts in performances using my augmented reality app to detect cereals containing genetically modified corn in supermarkets around the world. My investigation into nutrimental systems from World War II to the present has led me to evaluate the quest for mastery over bodies and environments, behavior conceptualized through ideas of progress, beauty, domestication, and profit. These ideas, infused by the dominance of humans over non-humans, supported by systems like the agricultural and food processing industries, have resulted in the collapse of ecologies large and small. Indeed, eating reveals the interdependence of humans on edible matter. Food is integral to existence, and its manipulation since the Industrial Revolution has caused the world's greatest imbalance due to the immense environmental footprint involved in systems of food production and distribution. Food through art projects contribute to building knowledge about these spaces of tension. And with this in mind, I'll discuss several works that are nested within the Bichi project that I began in 2019, integrating the technological, the ecological, and the edible. Here I extend the category of symbiont to welcome non-human living entities and their energy flows in processes of coexistence that allow me to assess the quality of relatedness in their exchange, whether commensal, competitive, or parasitic. For me, the action of art making is like cooking in an alchemist kitchen. Projects are born in my kitchen and developed in other environments and mediums in processes that involve assembling and collecting things together. This is where the alchemy happens, witnessing rupture and disturbance, and remaining open to unexpected events that give new access to the real, conditions that I think are exemplified in the Bichi project. So at the onset of the pandemic in 2019, mold and fungi gradually took over vegetables and fruit that I had soaked and disinfected before refrigerating, as I was often mistakenly recommended at the beginning of the pandemic when nobody knew what to do. Interestingly, a bio-based symbiotic interaction unfolded, and the organic matter was transformed into these peculiar transspecies assemblages. Biosculptures, seemingly infinite in their variability, because symbiotic interactions between the host plant and the microbial inhabitants differ across plant species. This phenomenon became a guided experiment involving a bio-based process of culturing and decomposing in a domestic fridge. I call it my incubator. As key partner in bringing the microbial symbionts into aesthetic perception, I documented the bioforms with macrophotography, spawning a provocative series of images of living creatures that begged to be animated or better still, mutated into two works that I created with 3D simulation software. This is a video, so yes, it's going. So one is titled Bichi Kuchitu, and the other one Bichi Ku Chao. And the names point to my native language, which is Argentinian Spanish, in which the vernacular term bicho, and this is pretty much throughout Latin America, South America, in Spanish-speaking countries, is generically used to name any critter that we cannot identify, and whether it's big or small, we'll just call it a bicho. So this is a declination of that word. The works draw attention or associations between living organisms, sculpture, photography, and 3D computer modeling. The passage from one media to the other in the constellation revealed differentiated yet interconnected aspects of artistic creation. They involved evolution of new forms with an expressive intensity that intermingled their boundaries, highlighting the role of technology in the creation of emotion with regards to visual speculations about the future of food. This is Bichi Kuchao. The animations extended image making in a complex creative collaboration with technology, exposing the porousness of boundaries between what might appear as separate registers: subject, object, fact, fiction, and science, culture. So in keeping with holistic approaches to natural life and scientific, cosmological, and social ideals, the checkered quilt. Did I launch the video? I'm so sorry, I forgot. Yes, it's ongoing, yeah. So in keeping with holistic approaches to natural life and scientific, cosmological, and social ideals, the checkered quilt that enrobes Bichi Kuchao is taken from my digital intervention titled At Comestible Meal Plan. This was a tactical media work that I deployed in Instagram, where I considered the problematic logic driving notions of novelty, progress, and endless growth promoted in social ecosystems. That work is still live in Instagram, should you want to participate in it. With similar concerns, and nested in the Bichi project, Beach Eden is fertilized by different streams of thought related to the restoration of ecosystems. Here I investigate food chains, that is to say the method by which organisms gather their food, and the tentative edges that unfold from encounters of organic and synthetic matter. As you know, in healthy ecosystems, the units of energy production and exchange involve a symbiotic relationship. Changing weather patterns due to climate change destabilize ecosystems, resulting in food chain disruptions and biodiversity loss. And this is, of course, alarming because to survive, both humans and non-humans need energy transmitted through healthy, undisrupted food chains. Motivated by research into creative solutions to producing food, imbued with the critical skills needed to feed and heal ecologies, from regenerative biocultures to science-based food engineering, I construct physical sculptures with edible materials. Creations that define an introspective journey into the interconnections between organisms in aquatic and terrestrial food chains. So before the perishable sculptures wither, which happens within 3 days or so, I photograph them from 360 angles to further develop the project further with 3D simulation software. And then in collaboration with Mariel Martinez, who I think is joining us through Swapcard. So hello, Mariel. Thank you for your collaboration in this project. We use photogrammetry, that is to say the art and science of extracting 3D information from photographs, to process the images via digital simulation software, allowing us to synthetically re-engineer the still life as a virtual 3D artifact that is then reprocessed for several outputs, ranging from digital prints, 3D animations, and interactive pieces. I have to say that beyond photogrammetry, there is a real artisanal component in creating these 3D sculptures. I'm not going to talk about it this time around. That's perhaps for future reference. Beach Eden represents my analytical inquiry into the symbiotic interrelations of our metabolic pathways, biological food chains, and global networks. Exploring the intersectionality of energy flows in food systems, Beach Eden transforms ordinary materials, objects, and even information to create a new genesis based on questions at the forefront of my imaginary in times when the future of food is endangered. I am curious about emerging connected food ecosystems in which social, economic, scientific, and technological advances explore ways to feed a global population based on sustainable networked relationships in answers to questions such as, what will we feed a growing population in times of growing climate catastrophes? And also, who will grow that food? A second version of Beach Eden visualizes folds and edges of energy flows where fusion and remixing are the result of symbiotic ecological thinking in answer to questions such as, what are the new boundaries and convergences, and how do we extend these nuances of edge into the future? So, Beach Eden speculates on possible futures with holistic connections. A technobiologism positioned between the organic and the computational. A hybrid work where the affects of one body are seen to enter into composition with other affects in symbiotic relationships to co-join in composing a more powerful body. Aligned with the Food Through Art mission, the works nested in the multi-part Bichi project make visible the vulnerable encounter between variable nutrimental entities, revealing their interconnected chains and framing new ways, hopefully, of understanding connective threads. With the aim of learning about the nature of vitality, modeled after symbiotic relationships in the natural world, the Bichi project establishes hybrid consortiums to critically reimagine human-non-human relationships in symbiotic dynamic interplay. In these works, symbiosis is seen as the core principle, replacing an essentialist conception of individuality, and as such, hopefully they contribute to knowledge production with the potential to assess and generate effective insights and acts in the world. So thank you. I did not include a parting slide with my personal information, but I'll be happy to connect with you if you want to have a conversation about anything and everything that I've presented. The name again is Pat Badani. And you can also Google me or connect with me through Instagram and other social media platforms. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Pat.
Pat, thank you so much. Do we have any questions?
In this room, we have time. We are so lucky. We have time. Ah, une question. wait the microphone, please, for our friends. Wait the microphone for our friends who are here. And thanks.
Thank you, Pat, for all the beautiful slime molds that you grow. I just have a question about how you go about the selection of the things that you work with, the foodstuffs that you work with, because I know that there's several stages in there. So that was my question.
Right. Specifically in the last one? In Bichi Eden, because it varies.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's say that at the onset of the project, the biosculptures that were born, and they made themselves in my incubator, that was serendipitous. That really is the foods that I usually bring home to eat. So there was no intention. Let's say that the project pretty much originated because this phenomenon developed on its own. So from there, it was just like responding to a phenomenon that was occurring on its own, and then becoming not only an observant, but really empathizing with these sort of entities that were beginning this sort of symbiotic relationship with something that's, the edible is internalized in such a way, in a sort of way. So that part was really there was a sort of a direct connection between what I feed myself and the project. And from there was, let's say that the objects themselves, or the vegetables themselves, were not utilized as a point of departure, but rather the growth was as a point of departure for the 2 3D animations, Bichi Kuchitu and Bichi Kuchao. Now, for Bichi Eden, the current project, as I mentioned, there are food chains, both terrestrial and the food web is enormous. But I'm focusing on certain aspects or certain entities within terrestrial and oceanic or water food chains. So the project, the images that you saw right now, the videos that you saw right now, really pertain to aquatic food networks. So I am collecting elements, or if your question is how do I choose those, they are directly then pointing to the chains that are the entities, or where those chains are being endangered or broken. So that's my logic for choosing those. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
Any other question? Yeah, a question here.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I would like to know if you are thinking about the possibility of having like some kind of feedback for those digital entities that at some point were natural, or never dead nature, I'm interested in that. If you are thinking or planning to put something in reverse in the other direction, because now you are working from the nature to the digital, or if you are planning for coming back to the digital to the nature.
To create a feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly, like some kind of looping.
Indeed, that's a very good question. Thank you for that. It is one of the directions in which this project can and will go. This level of complexity is certainly part of the development project. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yes, we have a question over there. And after, maybe another? No?
Wow, I have so many questions. Hi, Pat. Those are absolutely beautiful animations. I'm wondering a couple questions. One, have you ever thought about growing things in real time for an exhibition? And two, I just love the idea of a bichi, something that you don't know what it is. Are there any sort of linguistic corollaries that you know? I mean, I can't think of one in English. Are there examples of that in other languages?
Very, very interesting, because obviously that this word bicho must come from somewhere. And I wouldn't doubt that there probably is some indigenous root to that. You probably all remember Lydia Clark's bichos, right? Her sculptures. Lydia Clark, a Brazilian performative artist. Okay. She had a whole series of very interesting sculptures called bichos. So it exists also in Brazil as part of the they speak Portuguese, not Spanish. But that's a good question. I'm going to follow up on that because for me, of course, it's part of my colloquial language. So I haven't questioned it to that extent. But very interesting point that I will consider for the future. And then you had your first question. I kind of missed it. This is a two-part question, right? Right. Yes, indeed. As you know, when you have a project, it can go in 1,000 directions. That is definitely one direction in which that aspect could be developed. Sometimes, as you know, as an independent artist, not affiliated to a university anymore, sometimes the access to resources to sort of go in one direction or the other, sometimes it's purely a matter of accessibility to resources, not the lack of interest or the lack of conceptual brains, a matter of thinking things through. So no, at the present time, there is no formalized direction in that way. But of course, the interest is there. If you can help out with resources, I would love to collaborate with you. By the way, I love your project of feeding ants. We're going to have to talk about more about that.